Hey guys, it's P. Rahim with the third tutorial, and today we're going to get started talking about arrays. So arrays are essentially places to store things. So they're things we can create, and we can put other data values in them and organize them how we like, and it's how we can differentiate between them and collect multiple variables and keep them in there and things like that. And so I like to call them big old closets. The only thing about this closet is you can't just throw stuff in and out of there at will. Everything has a specific element and a position in the array, which they must stay unless you change that up. So that's where sorting comes into play, and we'll just go ahead and get into how arrays work. So we're going to come over to our program here in Visual Studio, and I've already made a little template here again. We just have 3 buttons, and I have handlers for those methods ready to be created, and a list box right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop an array, and it's going to have 3 different elements in it, and each time we click one of the element buttons, it's going to display the string in the array position into this box. So we'll come over to our program here. I have button 0, 1, and 2. And we've done that 0, 1, and 2 just to keep consistent with the fact that the indexes in an array start with 0. So the first element in an array is actually 0. It's not 1. We have element 1 here because it's the first element, but we're going to call this button 0 just because it's going to access the 0 position of the array. So we'll go ahead and define our array outside of the buttons and just keep it within the form. And so we'll do string. It's going to be of type string, and then square brackets arr for array equals new string, and in here we can fill it up with the values we want. So we need 3 things. Let's go dog, cat, and bird. There we go. We now have okay. Let's see here. So we got new string. I'm going to fill this with dog, cat, and bird. Boom. So now we have an array of string data types with index 0 being dog, index 1 being cat, and index 2 being bird. And what we're going to do is have each of these buttons access those and display it into this list box here whenever we click on them. So when we click on button 0, we're going to do list result, which is our list box, dot items, dot add, and then instead of just typing out dog, we're going to do string, oh no, we're going to do arr, and then the position we want. arr is 0. And that will return dog when we use it. So let's go ahead and check that. It's going to run for the first time. It's going to load everything up. And then, boom, dog. So we can do that with the rest of them. I'm just going to copy and paste to save time. And change our indexes. So let's go ahead and run it. Dog, dog, cat, bird, cat, dog. All of them are accessing that index in the array. Alright guys, so now what we're going to get into is loops. Now loops are for when you want to do something over and over again. Obviously, if you want to do repeated action, such as add something and then add another thing and then add another thing to that, you don't want to go into your code and just keep adding it all together and having to write out each addition sign and stuff like that. What you'll do is you'll use a loop. So you don't even need to know how many times you want something to be done. We can use variables for that. And there are two different kind of loops we're going to hit on. We're going to hit on for loops, which are generally used for when you have a finite amount of iterations and you know that you want to stop at a certain point. Or you can have while loops where you might not know entirely if it's going to stop at a soon amount or something like that. And those aren't generally always countable. You just need something to keep happening over and over again until a condition is met. So that's what we'll use while loops for. In order to kind of get into how loops work, we're going to come back over to our Visual Studio program right here. And I have here made another template, and we just have a list box, and we have a print button, and here's its method right here. Don't worry about the name, that's a little error I had, but everything will work just fine. And I've already defined an array of integers. So we have a bunch of different integers here. And basically, what we want to happen is just when we click this, it just prints out those integers into this list box. Now we don't want to do listbox.items.add 5, listbox.items.add 2, listbox.items.add 7, or listbox.items.add nums1, listbox.items.add nums2, listbox.items.add nums. That's too much. That's way too much work for us to do. So we're going to use a loop to make our life a little bit easier. So what we'll do is we'll define a for loop, because we know we just have a countable amount of things we're going to go through this array, and we're going to declare a variable to accumulate. So we're going to x equals, oh dear, that's right, we have to know it's going to be an integer that's going to accumulate, so we have to call it int x equals 0. So we're going to, and within the context of this for loop, we're going to have variable x, and we're going to start it off equal to 0. And then we want to keep going until x is less than. Now what we can do here is we just want to print out every item in this array, right? So we know how many items are in here, but let's say I want to add one later, right? I don't want to use a finite number here, because then I have to go back and change this finite number. Instead I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little thing called nums, and that's our array, dot length. Now what that's going to do, oh here we go, semicolon, that's going to do is that's going to grab the length of nums, no matter how many elements are in here, and it's going to be represented here in nums.length. So if I add another element, this loop will still run until it hits the length of this array, rather than giving this a finite number, and if we make any additions to this, we have to go and change that. This will automatically update that for us. So that's going to go from x equals 0 till x equals nums.length, and we want x to accumulate just once every time, so we're going to give it x plus plus. Now, what it's going to do is it's on its first pass through of everything in here. The variable x is going to represent 0. It's going to run through all the code that's right here. It's going to come back up, add 1 to x, it's going to run through all the code again, add another 1 to x until x meets this condition to where it's just less than nums.length. Alright, so what we'll do with that x then, we can use that x to serve as the index in which we'll access each element in our array. So we can do listbox, we have a listbox1 dot items dot add, and then we'll do nums x. So the first pass through this loop, it's going to do add nums 0. It's going to come back up, add nums 1, add nums 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 spaces in here, and it's going to go to where it's less than 8. So it's going to go to 7, which num7 is our last element, right? Remember, because it starts at 0. So it should print out every item in our array just through these 4 lines of code. So we'll go ahead and run it. This is our first time on this project. Once you print, oh look, we got everything. It ends in a 3, right? Let's make sure that's right. 383. It ends in 383. Awesome. So we got that done. And it does again because we printed it. So that's just a run through on how for loops work. While loops will have a different syntax to it. You'll give it while a certain condition is met, then keep printing them out. What you can do is say you can declare our accumulator outside of the loop, and then start the loop and then say while x is less than nums.length, do this code, and then at the bottom of your code, you actually have to put this x++ because it's an action it needs to take within the code rather than within the context of the loop. So that's how loops will work, and you'll also find them working with in conjunction with arrays a lot, because having to go through each element in an array, generally you will not do one by one individually in the code. You'll want to go access through all of them and be able to compare values.